You'll often notice as you're trying to take the right steps to distance yourself from a narcissistic person, they double down on their behaviour and their manipulation, and their threats become far worse. And this is usually because you have confused the narcissist, because the narcissist has got used to the fact that certain things work on you so that they can extract what they need from you, and when they can no longer extract what they need from you, this dents their ego. They're no longer getting that admiration and validation, which is usually why they double down to try and extract what they want from you. So just how do you confuse a narcissistic person? Firstly, by learning to remain calm, which is what we are taught to do around a narcissist, to remain calm, to no longer react to them. We're not responsible for their provocation, we are responsible for our reactions. However, narcissistic people crave attention, they feed off reactions. So when we learn to gain that emotional restraint, it renders them powerless, it undermines them, it hampers them, and they look to find ways to regain that emotional reaction from you. However, narcissistic people do get bored easily, they do get offended easily, so the more they up their games, the more you remain calm, the more likely they are to leave you alone. However, you must remain safe. You have to be careful around those who lack empathy. When you avoid feeding their ego, narcissistic people thrive off that validation. They expect you to back up their stories no matter what, offer them that listening ear and that sympathetic attention. And when you limit that excessive praise that they so desperately require, when you stop joining in the conversation when they're talking badly of somebody, is when they're going to double down and accuse you of not taking their side, not caring about them. There's nothing wrong with giving credit where credit's due. However, when a narcissist is barefaced lying to you, there's nothing wrong with simply not responding to them. However, it does leave them questioning their games, and they up their games to regain control over you. Listening, something we're not actually taught that often to do with a narcissist. However, when you listen closely enough, when you actively listen instead of responding, instead of feeding their ego, they give themselves away, they tell on themselves. If you look for holes in their story or ask more questions, this challenges them, and they might start then questioning you, they might start then attacking you. However, because you're listening and not talking, you're no longer informing, and they can no longer learn what they can use against you, and you can learn to recognize. By listening, you can learn to recognize. Once you know the games, recognize the games and no longer play. Boundaries really hurt a narcissistic person because they feel entitled to do as they please. However, when you say no, they usually recognize that if they play the victim, or they guilt trip, or they shame, or they blame you in some way, they can usually get what they want from you. However, the best boundary around a narcissist is emotional, physical, and psychological distance. They believe they're the almighty, the all-powerful. So when you're remaining calm, when you're no longer reacting to them, when you distance yourself from them, when you're no longer feeding their fragile ego, this gets them to question themselves, which they don't like, which is more often than not why they will find a way to try and turn it on to why you're the one that's the problem, and unfortunately move on to a new source of supply while blaming you for why they had to move on, because in their mind you're the problem, you were no longer serving them. When you no longer engage in their power struggles, with a narcissist you have to choose your battles wisely. They are ego driven, and they often create that ego within us, and sometimes you have to break away from your ego also and just let them think whatever it is they want to think. Choose your battles wisely. Don't engage in the debate with them, because they're not interested in your thoughts, feelings, or point of view. They're interested in controlling you. When you're dealing with a narcissist and you're learning to step away from them, you have to do so safely, because they lack empathy, and there's no low they won't go to regain control over you and get a good, healthy support system to help see you through their games.